The rain was relentless that night, hammering against the windshield as Detective Harris sped down the empty suburban street. Sirens wailing behind him, he barely noticed the water streaming down his face. All that mattered was the call that came in just 20 minutes ago. A body had been discovered in the abandoned lot behind the old mill. A body, the dispatcher had said, that might finally shed light on the case that had haunted him for 20 years. Harris gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white, heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and fear. He had seen a lot in his career, but something about this felt different. He couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would change everything. He skidded to a stop, parking the car under the weak glow of a flickering street lamp. The lot was a wasteland of debris and overgrown weeds, eerily silent except for the tapping of rain. Harris jumped out, boots sinking into the mud, and saw Officer Martinez already crouched near the perimeter tape, flashlight in hand. "Detective," Martinez called, voice tense. "You're not going to believe this. It's like it was left here for someone to find." Harris approached slowly, stomach tightening. The body was partially hidden under a tarp, soaked and unrecognizable in the dim light. But even from a distance, Harris could see the signature detail that had haunted the department for decades. A peculiar mark on the victim's wrist, identical to the ones that had appeared in the first unsolved case back in 2005. His mind raced. Could it really be? After 20 years of cold leads, dead ends, and sleepless nights, fate had dropped the answer right in front of them. The victim's eyes, though clouded with death, seemed to stare directly at Harris. His stomach churned as he crouched closer, flashlight revealing the grim reality. Meticulous wounds, calculated placement, almost ritualistic. He swallowed hard and glanced at Martinez. "Call the lab and get me forensics now. Everything, every inch of this scene." As the officers worked, Harris's mind drifted to the first time he had encountered this case. It had started with a missing woman, young, ambitious, the kind of person whose life seemed too full to vanish without a trace. He remembered the frantic calls from her parents, the public pressure, and the feeling of helplessness that had sunk into the department like a stone. Weeks had turned into months, months into years, and every lead had gone cold. Every suspect, every tip, every hunch had led nowhere. And yet, the mark had never disappeared from his mind. "Detective," Martinez said, voice shaking slightly, "we found something else. In the mud, there's something." Harris knelt, brushing away the rain-soaked dirt to reveal a small metal object, a pendant engraved with a symbol he had seen in case files decades old. His chest tightened. He could feel the energy of the past 20 years, the frustration, the obsession pressing down on him. This wasn't just a breakthrough, this was validation. Someone had been careful, methodical, hiding in plain sight. And now, finally, they had slipped. Harris stood and surveyed the lot, rain pelting his face like icy needles. Memories of all the families affected, all the sleepless nights, all the missed birthdays and anniversaries came flooding back. He thought of Officer Lang, who had retired last year, still obsessed with the unsolved murders, muttering in the precinct hallway, "Somebody knows. Somebody always knows." That somebody, Harris now believed, was about to be exposed. By morning, the lot had transformed into a full-fledged investigation site. Forensic teams scuttled like ants, carefully documenting, photographing, and collecting evidence. Harris walked the perimeter, mentally replaying every lead from the past 2 decades. Every overlooked witness, every anonymous tip, every cold trail. And then he noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. Footprints. They were faint, but there, leading away from the body, disappearing into the shadows. Harris bent down, tracing the indentations, and realized with a sinking heart that whoever had done this wasn't finished. They had left a trail, a challenge almost, daring the investigators to follow. Back at the precinct, Harris convened a meeting with his team. The room smelled of stale coffee and exhaustion, but there was a buzz in the air, an electricity that had been missing for years. "We have the body," he said, voice low but steady, "and it matches every case from the series. The mark, the ritualistic placement, everything. This is it. This is our break." Detective Alvarez, a young recruit who had only recently joined the cold case unit, leaned forward, eyes wide. "Sir, do you think it could really be the same person?" Harris rubbed his face, trying to steady the storm of emotions inside him. "I don't. Just think it," he said. "I know it, and we have to move fast. This trail won't wait." Later that night, Harris sat alone in his office, files spread across the table, tracing lines from old crime scenes to the new discovery. Each case had a signature, a pattern only visible to those obsessed enough to notice. 20 years of mistakes, oversight, and misfortune had clouded the truth, but now, with one body, the fog lifted slightly. He picked up the phone and called Martinez. "Get me every surveillance tape from the last 24 hours around that lot," he ordered, "and check the registry for anyone recently released from parole who matches the old profiles." Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the other side of the city, the perpetrator, if they were aware, was already watching the news. A headline flashed: "Body found in abandoned lot. Investigation reopens cold case series." They sipped coffee slowly, unmoved, almost mocking. Years of evading capture had taught them patience. But even patience has limits. And tonight, Harris and his team had put them back on edge. The community began to murmur. Social media exploded with speculation, theories, and wild accusations. Some remembered the old cases. Others were hearing the story for the first time. Parents whispered warnings to children. Old friends reached out to the families of the missing, and the press swarmed the precinct. Harris barely noticed. He couldn't. This was a race against time, and every second mattered. Hours later, Harris and Martinez returned to the crime scene, this time with a detective from the FBI assisting. The lot looked different under the daylight, a stark contrast to the eeriness of the night before. Harris's eyes scanned every inch, and then he saw it, a small scrap of fabric caught on a jagged piece of rebar. Pulling it free, he realized it matched the clothing fibers found in the original 2005 crime. His pulse quickened. This was no coincidence. This was a breadcrumb left intentionally, or maybe unintentionally, but it was a clue. "Sir," Martinez whispered, voice tight, "if this is what I think it is." Harris nodded, too focused to speak. The case, cold and buried for 2 decades, was stirring. And for the first time in 20 years, the past and present collided in a way that demanded answers. Before they could analyze the evidence further, a call came in from the lab. Harris grabbed the receiver, listening intently as the voice on the other end rattled off preliminary findings. DNA matched, cross-referenced with old evidence. It was the same person. The same perpetrator who had evaded justice for 20 years was now, for the first time, tangibly within reach. Harris exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and apprehension washing over him. He turned to Martinez. "Notify the captain," he said, "and get me a warrant. Tonight, we start closing a chapter that's haunted this city for 2 decades. As the day faded, into evening, Harris walked the lot once more, rain beginning to fall again. He imagined the victims, the families, the friends who had waited years for justice. He whispered a silent promise. "We won't let this end unsolved. Not this time." And somewhere in the shadows, watching, waiting, the one who had caused all this knew that the game was finally reaching its climax. Before we continue, remember to like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more gripping true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Night fell hard over the city, shrouding streets in darkness and whispering secrets only the guilty knew. Inside the precinct, Detective Harris spread the old case files across the table like a map, tracing lines between victims, locations, and dates. Each paper was a story frozen in tragedy, faces staring out from photographs, names scribbled in fading ink, cries for justice trapped in yellowed reports. He felt a cold resolve settle over him. After 20 years, he couldn't let the perpetrator slip away again. Martinez stood beside him, leaning forward, eyes scanning each file. "Sir, the new DNA matches with the old evidence, right? This confirms it?" Harris didn't answer immediately. He ran a hand through his hair, exhausted but electrified by the realization. "It's him," he finally said. "Every case points to the same person. Every lead we missed back then, they were watching, laughing, and waiting." Alvarez, sitting across the table, shook slightly, gripping a folder like a lifeline. 20 years? And all this time he was out there? The disbelief in his voice mirrored what the whole team felt. Harris's jaw tightened. "Yes, and that's why we need to move carefully. Patience, strategy, but make no mistake, this is our moment." The team began coordinating. Surveillance was dispatched around known associates, old addresses were checked, and parole records were cross-referenced. Phone taps were authorized and social media accounts were monitored. The office buzzed with controlled urgency, a storm finally ready to break. Harris glanced out the window, eyes narrowing. Somewhere, hidden behind walls and locked doors, the perpetrator knew he was closing in. That thought alone made his blood run cold. By midnight, Harris found himself at a diner near the outskirts of the city, nursing a black coffee that had long gone cold. Martinez slid into the booth opposite him, carrying a file. "I've been running the victims' patterns, sir," Martinez said quietly. "Locations, times, habits. It's like he's marking a trail for us. Every 20 years we think it's over, but he leaves something. Always something." Harris studied the patterns, tracing his finger along maps and timelines. "He's meticulous," he murmured, almost to himself. "Careful patient, but even the smartest make mistakes." He paused, looking Martinez in the eye. "And tonight, he made one." Martinez leaned closer. "The footprint trail at the lot?" Harris nodded. "Exactly, and the scrap of fabric. Small mistakes, but big enough. We follow those, and we get him." Back at the investigation center, the surveillance team was already working overtime. Monitors flickered with images from cameras across the city. Alleyways, abandoned warehouses, and the few streets near the last known movements of the suspect. "There!" a technician shouted, pointing at a dark figure crossing the screen. Harris squinted. The figure moved cautiously, checking windows and street corners as if aware of every camera. He felt a shiver of recognition. It wasn't just a man walking. It was the same calculated presence from the old files, the way he paused, observed, and vanished into shadows. "Dispatch a unit immediately," Harris ordered, voice low but commanding, "and keep the cameras rolling. We can't lose him now." Hours passed. The chase was as much mental as physical. Harris and Martinez pored over maps, connecting dots, tracking movements, predicting patterns. The suspect, it seemed, was taunting them, moving deliberately, leaving just enough clues to keep the game alive. It was a psychological battle, 2 decades in the making, and neither side would give ground. Then came a breakthrough. A neighbour's CCTV, overlooked in the first round of checks, captured a blurry image of the suspect leaving a corner store near the last crime site. It was only a few frames, grainy and dark, but Harris recognized the posture, the gait, the slight limp from an old injury noted in past case reports. "That's him," he whispered, voice almost breaking from the weight of realization. "After 20 years, we finally have him." Excitement and fear intertwined. The team prepared for a tactical approach, aware that this could be the most dangerous confrontation of their careers. Harris reviewed every detail, recalling the warnings from retired officers who had chased this ghost for years. "He's smart. He studies you before you study him. Never underestimate him." They weren't underestimating anymore. They were ready. Late morning, Harris received a call from the lab. The latest DNA analysis had returned. It confirmed the suspicions beyond doubt. The same perpetrator, responsible for a string of disappearances spanning 2 decades, was finally identifiable. Harris felt a mix of triumph and horror. Triumph for the breakthrough, horror for the magnitude of the crimes, and the suffering endured by families all these years. He convened the team once more. "We have the DNA match, we have the surveillance, we know his patterns. It's time to move in." Alvarez's hands trembled slightly as she processed the gravity of the moment. "Are we really ready for this?" Harris's gaze was unwavering. "We've been ready for 20 years. This is the night it ends." Elsewhere, the suspect sat, in a dimly lit apartment, unaware that the walls were closing in. He poured himself a drink, calm, collected, and chillingly indifferent. Years of evading capture had taught him patience, yet he felt a twinge of unease. Something was different tonight, a subtle shift in the air. He couldn't place it, but instinct, buried deep, told him that the game was nearing its end. The operation began just after dusk. Teams moved silently through the streets, vehicles positioned strategically, communications muted to whispers and hand signals. Harris led a small unit, navigating alleyways and back entrances, hearts pounding with anticipation. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. 20 years of frustration, failure, and obsession had culminated in this moment. Inside the apartment, the suspect heard the faintest sound, a rustle, a shadow, against the window. He froze, a chill crawling down his spine. For the first time in decades, the hunter felt hunted. The tension was unbearable. Outside, Harris and his team positioned themselves, watching, waiting, ready to act at the first sign. A sudden movement, a door creaking, alerted the team. Harris signaled, and they moved in unison. The suspect reacted instantly, bolting towards the back exit. A chase erupted through narrow hallways and stairwells. Adrenaline surged as Harris pursued, the culmination of 20 years of obsession driving every step. The suspect stumbled, then lunged toward the fire escape, a desperate attempt to escape. Harris caught him just in time, pinning him against the railing. "Don't move!" Harris shouted, gun trained, voice steady despite the adrenaline. The suspect's eyes widened, shock, disbelief, and fear. You found me," he stammered, voice trembling. Harris tightened his grip. "You weren't hiding anymore, not tonight, not ever again." Handcuffs clicked, a sound Harris had dreamed of for 20 years. The nightmare, the obsession, the case that haunted investigators finally had an end. As the suspect was led away, Harris felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief for justice, sorrow for the years lost, for lives impacted, for the pain inflicted. Back at the precinct, the team celebrated quietly, knowing the story wasn't over. The trial awaited, evidence had to be documented, families had to be informed, but a chapter had closed. Harris sat at his desk, staring at the files that had ruled his life for decades. He allowed himself a rare moment of emotion, leaning back, exhaling, letting the weight of 20 years lift, even if only slightly. And in that moment, he knew the city could finally breathe a little easier. The shadows had been confronted, the ghosts laid to rest, and the long pursuit of justice had reached its climax. If you're captivated by cases like this one, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts on how the investigators finally caught the perpetrator, and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. The news of the arrest spread through the city like wildfire. Families who had waited decades for answers clung to their phones, hoping for confirmation. Harris walked into the briefing room, the weight of the past 20 years pressing down on him. Journalists lined the walls, cameras clicking, lights flashing, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the victims' families, seated in the front row, eyes red-rimmed, trembling with anticipation. When he confirmed the arrest, there was a mixture of sobs, relief, and disbelief. For some, it felt unreal. 20 years of waiting, 20 years of nightmares finally converging into a single moment. Detective Alvarez approached Harris quietly, her notebook clutched to her chest. "Sir, some of them they don't know if they should cry or scream. I've never seen anything like it." Harris nodded, voice heavy. "It's natural. They've been living with uncertainty, pain, and fear for decades. Now they get some closure, but the scars, they're still here." Meanwhile, the suspect was booked, fingerprinted, and placed in a holding cell. He sat calmly, almost eerily composed, flipping through a notebook filled with meticulous notes and maps. Every movement, every victim, every investigation had been documented in painstaking detail. When Harris visited him, the tension in the interrogation room was palpable. The suspect's eyes met his, cold and calculating. "You think you know me," he said quietly. "After all these years, you still don't." Harris leaned forward, anger and exhaustion warring in his chest. "I've studied every move you've made, every mistake, every trail. For 20 years you've tormented families, and now it ends. Do you understand that?" The suspect smirked, a flash of arrogance. "Ends? Detective, you think this ends here? You only catch the body, not the mind behind it. Some things are eternal." The words hung in the air like a curse. Harris felt a shiver run down his spine. He had prepared for this, had anticipated psychological games, but hearing them spoken aloud, cold and unrepentant, reminded him why this case had haunted him for so long. Back at the precinct, the investigation team continued to comb through evidence, connecting dots that had been ignored in the early stages of the case. Forensic experts worked tirelessly, analyzing fibers, DNA, and trace evidence that spanned decades. Every breakthrough fueled both excitement and dread, each new detail revealing the depth of the perpetrator's planning, the calculated cruelty behind the murders. In the victims' homes, families were slowly processing the reality. One mother, whose daughter had disappeared 20 years ago, clutched a faded photograph, tears streaming down her face. "I waited for so long. I thought I'd never know," she whispered to Harris, who had come to offer support. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You've been patient, strong. This truth, as painful as it is yours now. You can finally begin to heal." Across town, a father sat silently, staring at the empty chair where his son's laughter should have been. The arrest didn't erase the years of grief, the birthdays missed, or the milestones uncelebrated. But it did bring a sense of justice, a glimmer of hope that the nightmare that had shadowed his life could now be confronted. Meanwhile, the trial loomed. Harris and his team worked closely with prosecutors, preparing meticulously for a case that would be scrutinized under the harshest legal lights. Witnesses were contacted, evidence catalogued, and timelines reconstructed. Every statement, every photograph, every scrap of evidence was now weaponized in the pursuit of justice. During pre-trial preparations, Harris received a call from an anonymous source, someone claiming to have known the suspect intimately. Hesitant but desperate for any insight, Harris arranged a meeting. The source described the suspect's obsession, the meticulous planning, and a cold detachment that sent chills down Harris's spine. "He's always 2 steps ahead," the source warned. "Even when you think you've caught him, he's already thinking 5 moves forward. Be careful." Harris thanked them, mind racing with the implications. Court day arrived and the media circus was overwhelming. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and the courtroom filled with a mixture of anticipation, anger, and grief. The suspect entered composed, almost detached from the chaos surrounding him. Families watched, hands gripping benches, waiting to see justice finally unfold. Harris took his seat, notebook ready, heart pounding. 20 years of chasing, tracking, and sleepless nights had led to this. The prosecution laid out the case meticulously. Photographs of crime scenes, forensic reports, eyewitness accounts, and DNA evidence were presented in a chilling narrative of calculated cruelty. Each exhibit revealed the depth of planning, the cold efficiency, and the sadistic enjoyment the suspect had derived from evading capture. The courtroom was silent, the weight of the evidence pressing on everyone present. During cross-examination, the suspect remained calm, occasionally smirking, answering questions with calculated brevity. But cracks began to appear. Moments of hesitation, a slight flinch when confronted with incontrovertible evidence, and subtle gestures betraying a lifetime of tension and guilt. Harris watched closely, noting each micro-expression, each sign that the walls were closing in. Outside the courtroom, families whispered, holding hands for support, exchanging glances that conveyed decades of unspoken pain. The media reported every moment, every revelation, and the city felt collectively haunted by the unfolding drama. Harris knew that while the legal system would determine punishment, the emotional closure for families was already taking shape. Pain interwoven with relief, grief tempered by justice. During a brief recess, Harris stepped into the hallway, reflecting on the journey. 2 decades of chasing shadows, of chasing a ghost that seemed always one step ahead, had led to this moment. The city had finally confronted a darkness that had lingered far too long. He felt a quiet satisfaction, tempered by sorrow for lives lost, and scars that would never fully heal. Returning to the courtroom, the verdict neared. The tension was palpable. Families leaned forward, holding breath, eyes fixed on the proceedings. The judge called the court to order, and the jury readied themselves. Harris's heart pounded as the foreman stood. Every second felt stretched, the weight of 20 years of unresolved pain pressing into that room. And then it came. Guilty. The word reverberated, echoing through the chamber, through the city, through the memories of every investigator, every family member, every friend who had waited for justice. Tears flowed freely, sobs breaking the heavy silence. Some laughed, some cried, some whispered prayers of relief. The nightmare that had haunted investigators for 2 decades was finally over. As the suspect was led away, Harris allowed himself a rare moment of release. He thought of every sleepless night, every wrong turn, every lead that went cold. The journey had been long, torturous, but justice had prevailed. He turned to Martinez and Alvarez, both weary yet resolute. "We did it," he said simply. "We finally did it." And in that moment, the city exhaled collectively, haunted no longer, finally able to face a future where fear no longer ruled. The victims' memories were honored, the families could begin to heal, and the legacy of relentless pursuit, patience, and determination stood as a testament to the power of justice. If this story has gripped you, make sure to like the video, comment your thoughts on the case, and subscribe to the channel for more chilling true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Weeks passed after the verdict, but the city still felt the tremors of what had unfolded. Detective Harris walked the quiet streets alone at night, memories of the investigation replaying in his mind. 20 years of chasing shadows, of painstakingly piecing together fragments of truth, had finally culminated in justice. But the weight of it all lingered, heavier than ever. Each crime, each victim, each family that had suffered, Harris carried them with him, a silent burden etched into every line of his face. He stopped at the corner of a familiar street, looking toward the abandoned lot where the final body had been found. The rain had returned, soft and relentless, washing over the empty space. He imagined the scene as it had been, the chaos, the meticulous placement, the despair. And yet, amidst the darkness, there was a strange sense of peace. After 2 decades, the nightmare had finally ended. Back at the precinct, Martinez and Alvarez were compiling the final report, their energy tempered by exhaustion, but buoyed by accomplishment. "It's almost surreal," Martinez said quietly. 20 years, and it's finally over." Alvarez nodded, eyes fixed on the photographs and evidence laid out on the table. "Every late night, every dead end. It led us here. It's hard to even believe." Harris joined them, leaning on the edge of the table. "Believe it," he said softly. "This is the reality of persistence, the reality of justice. Sometimes it takes decades, but it catches up." The families began tentative steps toward healing. Some returned to ordinary life, holding on to the closure they had longed for. Others spent hours in counseling, processing grief that had been suspended for 20 years. In quiet moments, Harris would receive letters, notes of gratitude, memories shared, and even photographs of those now able to smile again, free from the shadow that had loomed over their lives for so long. Each letter was a reminder that their work mattered, that the years of frustration, sleepless nights, and obsession had not been in vain. Harris reflected on the lessons of the case, the relentless pursuit of truth, the power of persistence, and the necessity of hope in the darkest of circumstances. He thought of the retired officers who had never given up, of the young detectives who had breathed new life into the cold case, and of the families who had endured unimaginable pain. Every life touched, every story haunted, every detail mattered. The case wasn't just about solving a crime, it was about restoring faith, however fragile, in justice itself. In his office, Harris opened the old case file one last time. The photographs of victims, the notes scrawled by past detectives, the maps connecting each crime. It was a chronicle of obsession, cruelty, and determination. He traced the lines with his fingers, remembering the challenges, the dead ends, and the breakthroughs. And finally, he allowed himself a rare, deep exhale. The ghosts that had followed him for 20 years were slowly fading, their stories finally told, their suffering finally acknowledged. The suspect, now behind bars, had little to say. The trial had stripped away his arrogance, leaving him exposed and powerless. For the first time, he faced the full weight of accountability. Harris watched from the courthouse steps as families embraced, tears and laughter mingling in a cathartic release. Justice, long delayed, had arrived. And yet, Harris knew the scars left by this darkness would never fully heal. Some wounds run deeper than time, leaving reminders of loss, pain, and endurance. Months later, Harris returned to the abandoned lot, now quiet, almost serene. The city had moved on, life continuing its relentless march. But he paused, reflecting on the journey. The rain fell gently, as if washing away the remnants of sorrow, and he imagined the victims finally finding peace. The lot, once a stage for horror, now held the memory of perseverance, resilience, and the triumph of justice over decades of fear. He thought back to the moment he first saw the body that had reignited the case, the shock, the fear, the intensity of knowing that finally, after 20 years, the past and present had collided. That moment had set in motion a chain of events that would test every skill, every intuition, and every ounce of patience he had cultivated over a lifetime, and it had been worth it. Worth it for the victims, for their families, for the city, and for the countless investigators who never gave up. Harris's phone buzzed, a simple message from Alvarez. Case closed, families notified, finally. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries both relief and sorrow. He typed back, "We did it, 20 years and justice finally won." The screen glowed briefly before going dark, leaving him in the stillness of the evening. Rain, falling, memories lingering, and the knowledge that the shadows had been confronted, if not entirely erased. That night, as Harris walked home, he reflected on the haunting nature of the case. The perpetrator had been meticulous, calculated, and patient. But even the smartest cannot escape the persistence of those who refuse to let darkness win. The city, scarred but resilient, had witnessed the closure of a nightmare that had stretched across decades. And for Harris and his team, the journey had been a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth, the endurance of hope, and the unforgiving nature of time when paired with human determination. The story of the case would linger in the public memory, a chilling reminder of the evil that sometimes walks among us and the courage required to confront it. Harris knew that other cases would come, other mysteries would demand attention, and other shadows would haunt new investigators. But for now, this case, the one that had defined so much of his life, was finished. Justice, delayed but never denied, had prevailed. As he entered his apartment, Harris allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered in the distance, a mosaic of life moving forward. He poured himself a drink, raised it silently in memory of the victims, and whispered a promise. Your stories have been heard, your suffering acknowledged. You will not be forgotten. And somewhere far away, in a cell that once seemed impossible to reach, the perpetrator sat in silence, stripped of freedom, stripped of power, forced to reckon with the consequences of 20 years of terror. The case that haunted investigators for 2 decades had finally reached its end. The city could breathe again, the families could begin to heal, and the legacy of tireless pursuit, relentless investigation, and unwavering courage would endure, a testament to justice prevailing even in the darkest of times. If you were captivated by this story, remember to like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more chilling true crime documentaries that keep you on the edge of your seat. The truth may take years to surface, but justice in the end always matters.